investment is run by investment bankers. Morningstar's modus operandi.
DWS Top Dividende is het derde dividendfonds dat in deze serie onder de loep wordt genomen. Ik praat met beheerder Thomas Schüssler. Kenmerkend aan het fonds is dat Schüssler streeft naar een dividendrendement van 4 tot 4,5%. De lage omloopsnelheid van 18% in 2010 bevestigt het lange termijn karakter van de dividendstrategie. Thomas, your fund is underweighted in the financials and industrials, and is the financial sector no longer the cornerstone of a dividend portfolio?
Yeah, I would say that's the case because a lot of financials, in particular in the US and Europe, have other problems than paying out a dividend. They need to raise equity, so a lot of financials are not that interesting anymore.
And not even in the US, where banks start to pay dividend again?
Yeah, but they need to ask the Federal Reserve first whether they can do that, and they will only allow it under certain circumstances. So even in the US, I think it's not that attractive.
Okay, yeah. And you're overweighted in telecom and utilities. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I think within the framework of a dividend fund that is understandable because these sectors tend to pay out more, they have a higher dividend yield, and the dividend tends to be sustainable.
Your top 10 holdings contains two Dutch companies, Unilever and KPN. And what in particular make these two companies attractive for a dividend portfolio?
In the case of Unilever, it's clearly the fact that the dividend is safe and growing. They have very good businesses, in particular in emerging markets, where you have a lot more growth than in the West. And in the case of KPN, you have a very high dividend yield, almost 9%, which is probably not going to grow by much, but which is, I would say, still sustainable for the next couple of years.
Is there a near-term risk of companies cutting their dividend because of a possible recession?
There's always some risk of some companies, in particular in cyclical areas of the market, that might cut the dividend. But for 90% of my companies, I would say that there's almost no risk.
Yeah, and have you already anticipated on this?
Well, if I anticipate that, I would sell the company in advance because a dividend cut is the last thing I need in my portfolio. Yeah? So we will definitely sell if we assume there's going to be one. Of course, we're not 100% right, so it happens that we have companies still in the fund, but we will try to sell.
And the risk of companies buying back shares in favor of paying dividend?
Usually a buyback is more a complement to a dividend. So they pay a dividend and on top of that they offer a buyback. There are very few companies that would actually replace the dividend with a buyback, and if they do, we wouldn't like it at all because a buyback is a much bigger commitment than a dividend.
And why do you limit your holdings to 3%?
Our approach is to run an equally weighted portfolio. That means we have 1 or 2% for each company, irrespective of the size. So to spread out the equity risk equally. So we are not going to concentrated positions.
Yeah, but is that not that too restrictive? If you have one favorite company, you're only allowed to have 3%.
Yeah, but the idea for my fund is I want to actually invest in the dividend theme, not necessarily based on big single stock bets. Yeah. So I typically don't have the 1 or 2 companies I like that much, but I have 10 or 20 companies I like more. So I have an equal weighting in that companies.
You're looking for a dividend yield of 4 to 4.5%, but with your holdings McDonald's and Intel, it seems you sometimes pass this rule.
Actually not. On average, we'll have a dividend yield of 4.5%, but we have always said we will have stocks in there with 3%. If they are attractive based on the sustainability, on the low payout and the dividend growth. And Intel actually is in our model portfolio, is in our screening list.
Yeah. DWS Top Dividende krijgt van Morningstar de waardering brons. Het fonds opereert overtuigend. Maar door de focus op dividend en de koppeling met top-down strategieën moeten beleggers wel rekening houden met een duidelijke afwijking van de benchmark. Maar dat zou door het beproefde beleggingsproces op langere termijn de moeite waard moeten zijn.
Morningstar's modus operandi.